Hello, everybody. I'm meteorologist Hutch Johnson. On this Tuesday night, once again in the same area, the breadbasket of the United States, a severe weather risk is entailed. I'm a meteorologist of 30 years, and tonight I'm going to walk you through where the risks are the greatest, what those risks are. We'll take a look at the radar and show you what's going on, and we're going to talk about the track and timing of these active storms as we head into the evening. But for now, we're going to start right away with a look at what we're seeing across the nation now. Now, I am letting you know that you'll want to make sure that you're keeping up to the very latest with your favorite source of weather information for these storms that are working their way through the nation's midsection. From Fargo, it's just ordinary garden variety showers, thunderstorms near the South Dakota border with Iowa. Once again, Iowa seeing the risk for some nasty storms tonight. These extend in a narrow band all the way through Kansas into Oklahoma. And we'll talk about the risks tonight. Now, there is a storm system working its way out of the Rockies with some shear in that storm. Therefore, there is a risk for tornadoes and tornadic storms once again. And we'll go ahead and highlight the details with regards to those storm risks as we go through the evening hours. Now, the National Weather Service does have a long, huge area of a tornado watch. Now, I want you to keep in mind in the yellow counties here, a tornado watch means the ingredients are there for everything we need to see tornadoes happen. Now, not everybody in this area will see tornadoes because that's just how small tornadoes are. Think of it this way. A huge tornado has a diameter of 1 mile. It's like putting your pencil on a map and drawing a line. That's the area impacted by a tornadic thunderstorm or the tornado itself. Thunderstorms, on the other hand, have an average diameter of around 10 miles. So those can impact a little bit bigger area. The risk is there. The ingredients are there through much of Des Moines, the eastern reaches of Nebraska, straight down through western portions of Missouri and eastern Kansas. What you're looking at down by the Oklahoma City area, these peach colored, that is a severe thunderstorm watch. And there is indeed a risk of some stout thunderstorms there. It means all the ingredients are there in and around Oklahoma City and points west for some thunderstorms to contain potent hail. Severe thunderstorms can also have flooding rain. That is the number one life-threatening measure when it comes to, or risk when it comes to severe thunderstorms. So taking a look right now, let's go ahead and zoom into some radar data for you, because we do have some active tornado warnings. And again, I'm going to encourage you, if you're watching this, to check your real-time weather information if you're in the path of these storms. But we're going to go over the forecast here momentarily. Right now, we'll take an early look at what we're seeing with regards to these storms as they make their way through and towards Kansas City, Topeka, Falls City, Nebraska, down towards Auburn, Nebraska. We do have an area or a line of storms, and there is an active tornado warning here in the red. Now, the orange polygons you see here, thunderstorm warnings. So let's take a look at these on the latest local radar scan. Now, check this out. As we zoom in just a little bit more closely, we'll see this area of orange. That's very heavy rain. And on this storm, I'm going to grab my pencil down here, and I'm going to circle this little area right here. That area has that hook shape to it. You see it right there? That hook is called a hook echo. And oftentimes where that hook echo is where we have rotation in the storm. Now think of it this way. If a storm is spinning tightly, raindrops and hailstones can get, just like a centrifuge, thrown out of that area of rotation. It's why we see debris flying out and away from tornadoes. So the radar detects this area where it looks like there's very weak radar echoes, as opposed to the strong radar echoes that show up in orange or that show up in red. So right here near Vermilion, we have a very tight rotation. Now, if we take a look at the warning, this is a radar indicated tornado. That means that essentially, the radar is picking up the spin. What does that spin look like? Let me show you on what we call the velocity. There's a couple of ways of looking at this. And again, we're looking at a radar that is located down here. As we look down here to the south, meaning near Topeka. Now, as we zoom back into the storm in question near this Vermilion area, we see reds motion away from that Topeka area and greens. And when they're right next to each other like they are right here, that is where the rotation is. Oh, latest scan has just popped in, 4:57 p.m. Central Daylight Time, as this storm is skirting along that border down to the south. Okay, that's a look at the storm. Let's get a look at what the National Weather Service says is the concern with this particular storm. Let's take a look at the text. So there is an active tornado warning for this. I'm going to center this so you might have a better chance at seeing it. National Weather Service has issued that warning for central or east central Marshall County in northeastern Kansas until 5:30 Central daylight time. Now, it's moving east at a ripping 45 miles per hour out there. That hail up to 2 inches in diameter also possible from this particular storm. So getting that speed of movement of the storm from the National Weather Service can be an important piece of the puzzle as well. And again, sizable hail from this particular storm is going to be a risk. So again, I want to encourage you to get your National Weather Service watches, warnings, and advisories from your trusted source locally in a timely fashion. We also have an active tornado warning for this storm sneaking out of the polygon now with that spin right here. Okay, the pink, that's the hail. And that hail, that's huge hail potential. Again, likely over an inch. But down here on this south side where the inflow is coming in, and that little backward C shape is likely where we're seeing that greatest risk for seeing anything tornadic out of that storm. Now, moving up a little bit farther to the north, let's check out our neighbors in Iowa. As we look just past Atlantic, heading in toward the Des Moines area, is a severe thunderstorm warning. This big storm, let me get a closer radar. Let's look at the Des Moines radar. And numerous storms that are right along the interstate here, showing that we have some stout activity, a lot of hail, and these storms are moving off to the east. You can even see similar cutouts in these, like I was talking about before, these hook echoes. 1.5-inch diameter hail is expected from this storm, 60-mile-per-hour winds. And again, the National Weather Service telling us a little bit more about the speed of movement of this storm. It's mainly in southern Adair County, northern Adams County, and it's moving off to the east at 35 miles per hour. Ping pong ball size hail is a headache indeed. And the threat is there. The ingredients are there for rotation in this storm. And a quick peek at what that is showing with what we call storm relative motion. It's taking out the motion of the storm and when it's looking at the wind calculations, and we see reds next to green from the Des Moines radar. Green motion toward Des Moines, red motion away. So there is some pretty tight rotation with this storm, and there is the possibility that these storms could quickly produce tornadoes in those areas. So that is what's going on with regard to this. I'm going to hop over and take a look at some model guidance right now. Now, I'm going to load that up while I'm visiting with you about some of the risks when it comes to tornadoes and some things to think about while I'm working with the radar over here, loading up model data. A couple of things when it comes to tornado watches. Many areas that I showed you in yellow, spreading from Iowa, Nebraska, and straight down into Kansas. Numerous counties are in a watch. A watch means the ingredients are there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a tornado happening now. A watch is a great time to think and review your plans just in case a warning happens, just in case you look out and see debris flying and a tornado's heading your way. Stay informed of the weather. When a storm approaches you, know that the ingredients are there for them to become severe and even produce tornadoes tonight. And it's a good time for you not only to review your safety information, but to talk with your family members about where you can go to stay safe when the weather hits. Another thing to keep in mind, when a warning is issued, a warning means a tornado is imminent. It's been detected by Doppler radar, but what we as meteorologists see on Doppler radar does not necessarily mean that's what's on the ground. And that's where we count on you providing reports. If you see a funnel cloud out of a storm, if you see a tornado making contact with the ground and causing debris to fly, those reports can be called into your local authorities, the police department. They'll pass that on to your local National Weather Service, and that can trigger a warning from the National Weather Service. So your reports are very, very helpful come these types of weather situations. Keep that in mind. Now let's take a look at the ability to model this data as we take our way through the evening hours. So I'm going to zoom out and we'll take a look at some model guidance here about the track and timing of these storms on this Tuesday evening. Showers up near Fargo. We're going to zoom into the impacted area, southern Minnesota into western parts of Iowa tonight and through Kansas. So here we go. This is the area of concern. This is where the watches are. And as we set this into motion here, I'm going to go ahead and rock this back and forth. We're going to see as you watch the clock there that by 7 o'clock, these storms should be moving through Mason City, Iowa. Rochester, Minnesota could see some thunderstorm activity and maybe a few rumbles of thunder down in southern Minnesota. I can't rule out some hail. It doesn't look like the risk of severe is great, but it isn't zero either in southern Minnesota. Now, as we get into Des Moines, Indianola, Osceola, down in towards that, Ottumwa, Iowa area, the storms will not arrive until dinner time and after into that Ottumwa area, Oskaloosa. And notice this little southerly tilt to these storms as they make their way towards Ottumwa by 9 o'clock tonight. Look what's going on in At Red Wing, Rochester, these storms pick up possibly a little bit more intensity as we cross into the late evening hours in southeast Minnesota. Now, we'll go ahead and focus on the movement of these storms as we go into parts of Kansas. Notice this. These storms are more isolated in nature. A couple pimples by Beatrice, a couple by St. Joe's, a couple by Wichita. These isolated storms, because they are isolated, non-interfered with, the risk of tornadoes will be greatest as we go through the 6 o'clock hour tonight and all the way into 9 o'clock, and see them kind of diving south straight into the flow, the southerly flow of warm, humid fuel or air for these storms. So those are the tracks and timings of the storms as we head through the early evening hours. I'm going to grab just a little bit later model that was run a couple hours ago that'll give me some overnight trends for these storms as we work our way through. Here they are firing off now. As we go through the late evening hours, they push through the Quad Cities, Quincy, Illinois, Kirksville, Missouri, down south of Wichita on the Oklahoma border. Notice what's going on down in Texas. Those storms capped a hot upper atmosphere, not really firing according to this model. But look what goes on near the border with Oklahoma and Kansas tonight. Those storms just kind of percolate in that same area, training right on a boundary, and they sit there. So flooding rains is also going to be a problem in these areas that do have tornado watches as we go through. Then as we go through the overnight hours, notice the activity as it wanes, decreases in intensity through parts of central and southern Illinois, south of Quincy, north of St. Louis, and down in the areas south of Lincoln and Bloomington. Okay, so these storms are not going to be all-nighters as they work their way through. So that's a look at the timing, the active watches, the active warnings associated with our weather tonight. And again, I encourage you to stay informed if storms approach your area in the Central Plains tonight. There could be some stout tornadoes. The greatest risk will come from now as we approach the 5 to 6 p.m. time frame and about midnight tonight. And then after those time frames, we should start seeing these storms become a little bit more isolated and lose some of their potential as we head into the late overnight hours. Again, I'm meteorologist Hutch Johnson. It's a pleasure having you on board. Please like the video if you liked any of the content here. If you have questions, pop a question in. I love hearing from you. Let me know where you're watching from. And I love to have you subscribe by hitting the subscribe button down below. And make sure you hit the notifications for updates on when I have new material for you to look at.